Oh yeah.
A lot of elephant-based questions are overflowing into our mind as of late, not just because we haven't seen Jack do a single name attack in the entire series, so clearly the man is rolling into Power Warriors 5 busted as all hell. That's number one. But number two, and most importantly, the big boy itself, Zunesha, is here in Wano country. Elephant season has arrived, and Zunesha is about to show these World Government boys the time of their lives, or what little time they have left.
Help me!
But without a doubt, you have plenty of time to support your boys' content with a thumbs up,
Please!
with a subscription, and click on that bell to join the notification squad.
Please!
Now, off the gate, Oda's very sneaky, but off the gate, there are two fake outs. One is a Oda fake out, another one is actually a translation fake out. And I say this because there is seemingly a lot of confusion as to what exactly the random World Government guy is talking about. So, right here, in the Viz Media version of the chapter, the World Government soldier says this, and I quote, there's a huge shadow up ahead. And then someone else responds on the other line, what is it? Then the guy says, I don't know. An island? Now the key thing here is that when you look at the direction that the World Government ships are facing in, they're facing into the direction of Wano country. And we see these black clouds in the distance, in the horizon, in the second to last page, the bottom panel. This led many folks to believe that this black cloud shadow over the rocks in the direction of Wano country is the giant shadow slash island that the fodder guy is talking about. Completely unaware that Zunesha is behind them until it popped out at the end of the chapter. And plus we do know that Onigashima is flying around near the flower capital, and this guy might have seen Onigashima flying around in the clouds. The thing is though, when you read the scans, there is no mention of a direction when the fodder World Government guy speaks. In the same panel of the scans, the guy says, well, there's a giant shadow, then continues on to say, no idea. An island? So because there isn't any notation for a direction in the scans, it's clearer that the guy is talking about probably Zunesha, and he's actually looking in the opposite direction behind them where the World Government ships are facing, because at this point in time they are on standby. So when it comes to those very dark clouds that we see at the bottom of the second last page of the chapter, those dark clouds tend to be clouds we've seen before in the past when we are going into Wano country from a distance. Plus, think about this for a second, all right? We've seen maps of Onigashima and Wano country before. And Onigashima, even though it's in the air floating around because of Kaido, it's big enough to just really cover the flower capital section of the Wano country archipelago. It fits really easily in areas like Udon or Kibi or Kuri, those areas. So even if the father dude could see Onigashima flying over the flower capital, given the elevation and the clouds and regular binoculars, because I'm going to assume that this brother isn't sporting the Von Auga ocular upgrades. I'm pretty sure he's not that nice. Onigashima, given the distance, would just be a small blip or a small shadow over Wano country. It wouldn't be a huge or a gigantic shadow that both translations know to. So the best bet is Zunesha. Not someone like Blackbeard is descending onto Wano country, riding some gigantic 100-mile long black nimbus cloud. I'm willing to bet that's not the case. Now the second fake out is an Oda fake out. The elders' discussion about the devil fruit in conjunction with Zunesha arriving, I think itself is a fake out. That's right. I talk about this in my recent video that I did about the most important devil fruit in 2022. That video is also based on this chapter as well. But the key thing here is that their conversation is about the fruit's awakening and the government giving the fruit another name to hide it from the history books. I don't think it makes much sense for us to have never heard of this fruit before, to find out its fake name, let's say in the near future, and then later on find out its real name.
What do you mean by that?
Nah, it sounds a bit weird. Plus, we've seen awakened Zoans before in the past and it fell down with a Jailer Beast. and they are in hybrid-ish Zoan forms. Now, to be fair, they are regular Zoans, and we can assume that whatever Zunesha would have would be like a mythical something. But even still, when you're a Zoan, you have insane stamina, you have insane endurance and recovery speed and durability, and that is the complete opposite of Zunesha. Despite its size and its mass, we saw with Jack the Drought in chapter 821, after a cannon bombardment, its legs and its skin start to crack and break down. Jack noted how it was old and decrepit. And that's gotta mean something, because cannonballs, for the most part in One Piece, are relatively useless, but here Zunesha is buckling under because its skin isn't tough, its legs isn't tough, because it's been around for 1,000 years. And then finally, on top of that, I'd argue that Zunesha itself predates the creation of the Devil Fruits. Yes, because Zunesha was born probably during the Age of Heaven. Now that is going to be its own video in the future. But ultimately speaking, I would say that I think that they were created, the Devil Fruits were created by the ancient kingdom of Yor long, long ago as a means to combat whatever happened with their defeat. Meaning that they've been around, the Devil Fruits have been around for, let's say, 900 plus years, something like that. However, I do want to entertain this idea for a little bit. The idea that Zunesha is a Devil Fruit user, since anything is possible given Oda's imagination. And maybe the term awakened in the chapters actually refers to the Devil Fruit not respawning. Because normally when someone dies, the soul of the fruit goes to the fruit, therefore it respawns. But because Zunesha has been alive for 1,000 years, the fruit hasn't respawned. If so, then this legendary Zozo fruit could have been eaten by some giant of tremendous size, which is possible, like a giant that was just as big as the Onigashima Skull Dome and so on. However, I did see a theory, I think either on Twitter or on Discord, where someone talked about the idea of Zunesha being an ancient weapon, like Pluton. What if Pluton, the ancient battleship of Yor, ate a mythical Zoan Devil Fruit? It is a weird idea since we do know that it's an actual ship, and Frankie had those blueprints. I mean, that was the entire mission of CP9 during the Water 7 arc. However, we do know for a fact that Vegapunk can make inanimate objects turn into Devil Fruit users, i.e. Frank Freed, another elephant. So you upscale Frank Freed, the sword that ate an elephant Zoan ability, into a battleship that ate a mythical Zoan ability, which would be essentially Zunesha. After all, we know that currently Vegapunk can do this. Then back then, when I argue they are way more technologically advanced, this ancient kingdom, then they could absolutely do something like that if they so choose to. And keep in mind that Vegapunk could be on one of those World Government ships, because at the beginning of this arc, Orochi did say to bring Vegapunk to Wano country. So he could be on one of those ships. So we can't have them being destroyed just yet. So this theory's out there, and I'm not gonna bank on it too much. But keep in mind that all these possibilities could be flipped too, where it could be a natural born elephant in the world itself, but has an ability of some kind that we haven't seen it use yet. But again, when it comes to Zunesha being a different user, this is not the camp where I'm in. No, sir. Again, watch a video on the most important Devil Fruit in One Piece 2022. I'll link in the box below, and you'll see exactly what I think when it comes to this Devil Fruit stuff. Now, another major question we gotta tackle with all of our size and all of our girth is why?
Why?
Why is Zunesha here? Now, the very easy answer is Momonosuke talked to Zunesha before they left for Wano country. In chapter 822, Momonosuke says he wanted to have a conversation with Zunesha to ask it why its voice was able to reach it. Because again, we know that Luffy couldn't talk to Zunesha, and according to Pedro in the past, Oden nor Roger could talk to Zunesha as well. Only Momonosuke was able to command Zunesha. And in fact, more so than that, Zunesha and Momonosuke, like they had Rinnegan's, they were able to share vision. That is one of the most oddest things when it comes to the voice of all things. But honest to God, we need a lot more details on that ability. We really, really do. But to be fair, this would also be maybe an ability of Zunesha's Devil Fruit ability, if it has one. But again, Momonosuke wanted to have a conversation with Zunesha. Momonosuke was gonna talk to him about Kozuki clan stuff and so on and so forth. And it's easy to think that Momonosuke told Zunesha to pull up because they need support going into Wano country. But there's also a good chance that Momonosuke wasn't able to communicate with Zunesha again after the incident with Jack the Drought. Zunesha wasn't under duress anymore. This could explain why Oden, a member of the Kozuki clan, couldn't talk to Zunesha as well, because back then it was just vibing, as per usual. And then also, Momonosuke, I think during the entire arc, would actually show signs that some help or support would be on the way. Especially if it was, you know, someone like Zunesha. A kid like him, he'd be like giddy, like, no, Kaido, you'll see, man. You'll see, Kaido. Yeah, if Zunesha was pulling up like that, I'll be pretty confident too. I'll be pretty damn snarky too, like, yeah, Kaido, you have no idea what's coming your way, man. So I think that would be some signs as well if he did tell Zunesha to pull on through. So there's a few other angles we can look at this from. And one is really, really damn interesting. First of all, Luffy, Manga D. Yes, Luffy could have commanded Zunesha to come through, even though it's a very, very, very slim chance, because again, as far as we know, he doesn't have the ability to command Zunesha. But when he talked to Momonosuke with the voice of all things, his voice of all things seemed to be so potent, so strong. Law's crew could hear Luffy speak telepathically. So it's possible that he was able to telepathically broadcast his voice so loudly to anything with that ability, the voice of all things, and in conjunction with Momonosuke being the main target for Luffy's voice of all things, saying how they're gonna beat Kaido and defeat Kaido, Zunesha might have picked that up too. So it's like having your phone on speaker and you're talking to someone, but someone in the other room hears what you're saying. Luffy will beat Kaido. Zunesha heard that. Beat Kaido, what? Picked it up as you order, as you command, and it was nearby, walking nearby, and then boom, he pulled through. But what's even more mysterious, and what's even more intriguing, is going back to chapter 822. And this one would be in lockstep with the reason why Zunesha was punished for his crimes long ago. Because in the beginning of chapter 822, after Chopper and the doctors heal up Zunesha's leg from Jack's assault, Dr. Miyagi, he ponders a question about Zunesha. He says that every life must eventually come to an end. If it does have a will, talk about Zunesha, then I wish to ask it a question. For these 1,000 years, what have you been walking towards? Miyagi, doctor, but also philosopher and great thinker. He's thinking, very important here. He implies that Zunesha for 1,000 years has been walking to a specific target in mind. And it also implies that when Zunesha has reached that target, Zunesha might die, since the journey will come to an end, and in the process it will atone for its sins that committed 1,000 millennia ago. The target of Zunesha might have been Wano country the whole time, and finally it has reached the target at this junction in this final hour. Which is crazy, because it does seem a bit odd that Zunesha would just so happen to reach Wano country at this particular point in time, right here, right now, when it's been walking across the oceans for so long. How did it not find Wano country before, earlier than this time frame? But it could also be a similar reason as to why things can get lost for centuries upon centuries. Oh, wait a minute now. Things that are just hidden mysteries and legends that we just aren't privy to hidden in the mist. The new world of the Grand Line is one of those locations in the world where odd things can happen. Islands can completely hide their magnetic field. Random weather phenomena can just appear, manifest out of thin air. There's a reason why the standard log post doesn't work in the new world, and you need to have a modified version where it has 3 log posts in one. Zunesha is known as the Phantom Island for a reason, and the way it appeared from the mist at the endless chapter, it also does remind you of things that are hidden in the mist as well, i.e. the Florian Triangle, based on the Bermuda Triangle in the real world, a place where weird, mysterious things happen all the time, but always veiled, hidden in the mist. It could be genuinely that simple because the One Piece world is genuinely that crazy of a world. And legends and powerful creatures have plenty of places to hide. But maybe the idea of finding Wano country is the wrong idea. It might be rather the time is ripe, or it's the correct time to go to Wano country to end its journey. But why? It is weird to think about it in this way, true, about how the time is ripe, now is the time. But when you look at the world as a whole, this time period is the right time period to change the world, because the major players, the fated players, have arrived to change the world. And for Zunesha, the most important thing here would be Momonosuke. Momonosuke exists in this era. There are 2 very intriguing things about Momonosuke that I want to point out here. Number 1 is that Momonosuke, after reading Oden's logs in chapter 1014, he stated that there was no way he could die. He realized that he had a mission, he had a duty to something, and he couldn't die before it was completed. And the page right after Momonosuke has his realization is when his voice of all things activates. It just so happens to activate. It's in conjunction with Luffy talking to Momonosuke telepathically. This could be an underlining symbolic cue on Oda's part, noting to the voice of all things playing an important role for the reason why Momonosuke cannot die, i.e. Zunesha. And then the second thing is when we compare Momo's ability to command Zunesha and no one else has the right to do so, there could be someone else, but I will save that at the end of the video. The thing here is that it is a very similar situation to Shirahoshi's ability to command the Sea Kings. Only she, as Poseidon, has the right to command the Sea Kings, which is also the reason why some folks believe that Zunesha has a tie or 2, at least, to an ancient weapon, or is an ancient weapon. Now, in chapter 968, when the Sea Kings are talking to each other about their sovereign being born soon, 10 years from that point in time, and another sovereign being born in the distant sea, the safe bet is Luffy. But notice how when the Sea Kings talk to each other, they say that they were delighted in anticipation of the day the 2 sovereigns shall meet again. Luffy and Shirahoshi have already met, and they didn't show any signs of happiness, of anticipation, anything of that sort, which would imply that Luffy is not the second sovereign that the Sea Kings are talking about, since they themselves did see Luffy and Shirahoshi meet. And if Luffy is Joy Boy, this means that Joy Boy is outside the paradigm of the sovereign. So hold on now, if that's the case here, who the hell is the other sovereign that the Sea Kings are talking about? Here's the thing. Folks would say it's Vivi, which is interesting. I can definitely see why. Because the idea of the sovereigns, in a way, is then be able to control ancient weapons. And Pluton is hidden somewhere in the sands of Alabasta, the original Pluton. This may mean that only a Nefertari, or the right Nefertari, like Vivi, would be able to control the ancient ship. But if The Sea Kings are just talking about two particular sovereigns because they just simply say, our sovereign. And there's another one going to be born. They're not giving us any number cap. This would imply that there are sovereigns outside of those two sovereigns. And this is where Momonosuke can slide on in. There are other sovereigns that populate the world of One Piece, but there are a specific set of sovereigns that are particularly important because they may have the ability to actually control the ancient weapons. Momonosuke was born in the past on Whitebeard's ship, so the timeline doesn't match up. Even if you want to include the idea of him being sent to the future, it still doesn't add up. But the idea here, again, is that you could have other sovereigns in the world of One Piece. So based on this then, why would Momonosuke be able to control Zunesha, but not Oden, even though they're both clan members of the Kozuki clan? Number one, Momonosuke is clearly on the path to becoming a leader of Wano, the shogun of Wano, but Oden never really wanted to be that. He was more of an explorer or an adventurer rather than a ruler. So basically, he wasn't the right Kozuki clan member, just how Roger wasn't the correct member of the D clan because he arrived to Laugh Tale too soon. Oden wasn't the right or the fated member of the Kozuki clan, but Momonosuke is. Hence the idea of Momo being one of these sovereigns. But the second thing, snip snip, is the second half of who Momonosuke is. Not a Kozuki clan thing, but an Amatsuki family thing, because Momonosuke's mother, Toki, is a member of the Amatsuki family. And after all, she was born during the Void Century. And she just so happened to be born into a branch or something of the Amatsuki family that was outside of Wano country. Remember, she spent her time traveling through time trying to get to Wano country until she eventually ran into Oden. If Zunesha's target from the very beginning was Wano country, then the goals of Toki and Zunesha are in lockstep. They have the same goal in mind: reach Wano country. And note to this too, in chapter 967, in the seas near Wano country, Toki just so happens to get ill. She gets sick and she cannot continue on the voyage. However, the next destination right after Toki is sent to Wano country is Zou. It just so happens to be Zou. So Toki was never actually on Zou when Oden first arrived, which means that during the Oden flashback, if there is/was a connection with Toki and her family with Zunesha, then Oda decided that it was not the right time to showcase this connection during the Oden flashback. That's why you gotta scratch your chinny chin chin as to why exactly, specifically, she wanted to reach Wano country. Again, that could have been Zunesha's destination from the jump, so it does make you wonder if Zunesha's crimes that he committed 1,000 years ago were against the Kozuki and or the citizens of old Wano, and the Amatsuki family might have played a role in this since Toki was clearly born outside of Wano country during the Void Century. And also at the beginning of chapter 1037, we see a balloon of Toki while the citizens are partying in the capital. So even though the Amatsuki family did support the leaders of Wano, the Kozuki clan at the time, and were even daimyos of a certain region in Wano country, the Amatsuki family, or the union of those two families, was the key to actually controlling Zunesha. So obviously this train of thought does go against the idea of Momonosuke individually being this unique fated sovereign, and it's more so his family's Kekken Genkai is what allows him to actually command Zunesha. Therefore, in theory, Hiyori would also be able, if she had the voice of all things, would also be able to command Zunesha. So there are many reasons why Zunesha could be here. But the final question, and the simplest question, is what is Zunesha going to do now that it is here? Man, what is Zunesha about to do? If Vegapunk is on these World Government ships, then Zunesha won't attack, or if it does attack, they'll be able to evade, because Vegapunk is still too important to be off screen. That's number one, obviously. And this also might be some reinforcements from the citizens of Zou. After all, the Mink and the Kozuki family do have legacy. They do have history with each other that spans clearly centuries. But I'm not too sure if it matters exactly who is on Zou, unless there's someone special, like Sabo's on Zou. Like Sabo and Kuma and Julie Bonnie, they're all on Zou, and they're about to pull up. Maybe Monkey D. Dragon needed a new mount, and he's riding on in with, listen, who knows, okay? I'm not too sure if it actually matters who particularly is on Zunesha. I think more so, it's the big man itself. What is it going to do? And the main thing I see Zunesha being here for is doing or helping with the thing that needs to happen at the end of this arc. Opening the borders of Wano. Now, to be honest, I have no idea how this would happen and like what way, like what the details on how the borders will be open. Like Zunesha could trunk it down, he could like step on it and then squish it down, he could like pull the islands off the plateau. Who knows, okay? But the borders of Wano country need to be open, because if Zunesha's crime 1,000 years ago led to the closing of Wano country's borders, i.e. Wano in the position that it's in right now, that may have been the reason why Wano country centuries later was known as the Land of Gold. Remember Yukimaru's words in chapter 937. He notes to how Wano country in the distant past was known as the Land of Gold, and pirates and even world nobles wanted to rule Wano country for this gold. But the legendary swordsman Ryoma was able to fend off these individuals and protect Wano country. Potentially, very similar to Shandora, the city of gold, maybe the reason why they had to close their borders was because of this gold. And that may had involved Zunesha centuries before Ryoma's time. Then Zunesha would have to pay for its sins and atone for its crimes by reversing what it had initiated 1,000 years ago. Whatever it would have to be done by Zunesha. But at the end of it all, Zunesha, like Miyagi said in chapter 822, all things eventually die. And Zunesha, after completing its journey and atoning for its sins, would die.